Welcome to Different Gravy, not just another Sheffield Wednesday podcast. I'm one of the hosts, Richard Miller, with a cold, and my co-host, Dr. Luke Gledall, is wilder than Chris. How much wilder? Stay tuned and find out. How are you doing today, Luke?
Good. I don't know if I really want to be compared too much to Chris Wilder, but other than that, I'm all right.
I had the unfortunate thing of sort of listening to a bit of Radio Sheffield on the way home, and I think they're just obsessed. Like, I mean, I'm sure if we were in the Premier League, we would get more coverage and stuff, but it was like they played a full, I don't know, like 15-minute droney press conference with, it felt very little editing, if there was any at all. Just like he was just spouting off on things, you know, just sometimes about football, but more just like, you know, and the weather we've been having, blah, 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 and just, yeah.
He's trying to get it down to a tight 15, possibly.
Yeah, maybe that's it. He's waiting to break it out on the circuit. Anyway, yeah, so you're well? You've coped with it?
Yeah, I'm doing well. It's, I could make some comparisons. I went to see the Kanye West IMAX release. It's related around his new album, which is kind of very gospel related. So I went to see on Thursday nights a screening, which I only managed to get one of the last 3 seats as I found out about it, so I was bang at the front of the IMAX. And that was pretty dull and pretty uninspiring.
Yeah.
And maybe I could make some allusions to something else that happened midweek, which we'll get on to.
Yeah, well, I suppose, in the same way that, Kanye will probably make some money out of this album, regardless of how disappointing the whole affair seems to have been. The midweek, what we may be talking about later, we got something to show for it. That's what it's all about, really. So without further ado, we should probably do
Breaking hoo-hoos.
Breaking hoo-hoos indeed. And the thing I was alluding to was the game against Stoke midweek, which we can probably always look at football, and we always will, especially on this podcast and plenty of other commentary, of where does football lie in this spectrum of entertainment. And maybe it's towards the more dull and boring side of things for the game against Stoke on Tuesday.
Yeah, better than bowls, maybe better than fishing. I don't think I'd watch televised fishing, but that game of football was ranking pretty low on the entertainment factor.
I know there's a phrase that my dad uses, which is better than rugby league, not as good as badminton.
That's quite fun. Yes, which
I think kind of captures up the events that happened on Tuesday midweek. As we all know, it was a 1-0 victory against Stoke. As you precursed, Rich, Stoker cited a degree of resurgence. But maybe that was damning with faint praise looking at their performance, because they seem like a pretty poor side.
Yeah, for all their jumped up twerp of a managers jumping around and flailing on the halfway line, there was not much good stuff from Stoke. They were pitiful, and we were just bad, and thankfully bad beat pitiful. It was one of those weird games where it felt like we had another gear potentially. If we were challenged, we could have stepped things up a bit. I don't know whether that is false hope on my part, but it just had that vague sense that we could have done a bit more if we'd needed to. But the fact of the matter was that kind of 5.5 out of 10 was more than enough to beat that dreadful Stoke City team.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of concept of do we have another gear, I think is probably true, but I genuinely felt that from what we were seeing, it was a hazy, hungover glimpse at an apparition of something happening, with having that second gear to kind of kick things up. Definitely need to, but it's, it wasn't a scintillating game of football by any means. But, this is, I think, something that we're seeing, and it's probably going to kind of lead and kind of kick on to our review of the game today. But certainly it's methodical. Certainly it was a clean sheet. And for the sake of Tuesday, it was 3 points. 3 points in the bag. So
And some bright bits in there. Another, I'd say defensively, a very sound display. They really didn't get any chances in the game at all. And I thought Luongo had another really fine performance, kind of doing what he does, which is sort of buzzing around the play and adding nice little bits of touch, a touch of the ball, a bit of energy, that sort of thing. But yeah, on the whole, a game pretty devoid of quality, but what quality was there, we were the ones bringing it along, which was the reason that we won the game. I think I remember Reach having a chance in the first half, which was really the only time anybody seemed to dribble a football for more than a couple of feet. And he had the shot low down to the keeper's left, which was, to be honest, fairly comfortable save. But it was about the only little glimmer of nice stuff that happened. And then a howling error from one of their 17 ginormous blonde centre-backs let Luongo sort of steamroll through and take his chance very, very efficiently. Again, a nonchalance. He scored his first goal with a sort of nonchalant air, and same thing here.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. The only thing I think really the only threat was it the Gregory header? I believe it was. Was it Gregory for Stoke? And then with the header, which was an impeccable palm away from deputising goalkeeper Cameron Dawson. So I was happy for him that he got the clean sheet, which I'd argue he probably should have done in the game against Cardiff last week. But
yeah,
I also clean sheet and 3 points, and it's in the history books. Is done. Hopefully, I don't have to watch that game again. I may suspect that sometimes we may see some kind of different iterations of a similar game in the future.
Yeah, I think coming away from today's game, there's a few. I think it's going to be interesting to talk about that match. We haven't really shared anything. We're not even sort of shared a text message of what we made of today's game against Leeds. A hugely early start for you. For me, it was too early of a start for a weekend, so I don't know how you must be feeling in terms of how the Sky schedule has stolen some shut-eye from you.
I really miss those. This is probably something that you may not like as well, but from my perspective, for where I am in the world, with my time zone, a 5 p.m. kickoff, even for something televised, wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. I quite like that kind of time, and then getting up at 10 a.m. is pretty sweet for me with a 7 difference. I mean, I know for yourself, when you commute into the games, that could be quite challenging. But 12 o'clock kickoffs are just nightmares. 12:30, 12. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just rubbish. And they tend to be not particularly good games, I think, as a result. Like, the players take a longer to warm up into them, and the crowds do, but I don't think that was the case today. To be like, the Hillsborough was bouncing before kickoff in a way that it doesn't all too often, which was a nice thing to experience once in a while.
So you think the 12 p.m. early kickoffs go against circadian rhythms?
Quite possibly.
The natural circadian rhythm of a football player. I'm also wondering as well, I mean, I find it hilarious that we do our podcast on the weekends. We look at the weekend games, which is fantastic. If we did it based on, if we did midweek games, Wednesday midweek performances are usually pretty poor. I mean, it's funny looking back at some of the results from midweek games. I remember a time when, probably about 5-6 years ago, but Wednesday were notoriously bad at midweek games. It was just something we couldn't do. And it made you wonder to a certain degree about performances on times. And even during, I think, the weaker periods of Wednesday, I think definitely the Saturday 3 p.m. games at home have usually been good value for Wednesdayites, and we've done pretty well.
Definitely. I think, in terms of the midweek games, that was certainly a feature under Carvajal, I think. That was, the more time we had to plan for a game, the better the performances were. And it felt like he spent so much of the kind of build up to the midweek games going, oh, it's such a shame to have to play Saturday, Tuesday. And it's really hard for the players. They can't really recover. And they are really tired when we play these games. And lo and behold, we put in some really lethargic performances, almost like we'd been given the opportunity to show all that lethargy and therefore it went out on the pitch.
The free rein to disappoint as much as being billed.
Not that I want to kind of I don't know, mollify footballers to the point of being toddlers. But, it's that kind of moment where...
but I feel sometimes we do in our conversation, don't we, I guess?
It's a temptation that's, I think, always there, unfortunately. But yeah, not footballers, toddlers in this case. They kind of fall over, and there's that moment where the reaction of the parent they look to after falling over will dictate what their reaction ends up being.
Yes.
So if the parent goes, "Oh no, you've hurt your knee," then the kid's like, "Yeah, I hurt my knee." And if the parent sort of went, "Oh, you're all right," yeah, I am all right actually. And it is a bit like that with the if you're spending the time in training going, "You're dead tired, aren't you? You're really tired," and it's kind of like they come out and lo and behold, they're a bit tired. Yes, I'm probably giving. It's probably slightly disrespectful to think of sort of grown professional men in such a way, but it did feel like that was the case under Carlos. They were given the excuses and readily took them up. So today's game. A fairly busy Hillsborough, although it was one of those where when you actually looked a bit closer at the North Stand, there was quite a lot of empty seats. Even though, at first glance it looked quite full, and then you're like, oh, do you know what? Actually, every other seat is spare at the moment. But still, a good noise and a good good buzz about the place. Despite the fact we had a bit of bad news before the kickoff again, in that our wonderful German left-sided centre-back Jerome Berner was not going to be able to make the game.
Yeah, and that was an interesting lineup for the fact that I was initially just purely disappointed. I think I was sending you a text pre-game about the lineup and saying, well, Westwood's back. Luongo isn't. Luongo misses out. Luongo's still not past a late fitness check, even though apparently he received some kind of level of all clear the other day. So that was disappointing. It was disappointing to miss him out and not see him in the 16 at all. And then, and then I came back in and saw that Berner had been injured in the warm-up or tweaked something. So Pelopessi had been upgraded into the starting line.
Have we heard anything since about Berner, or is it just still very preliminary?
Genuinely, the funny thing with me is I haven't actually had time to... I got up about 3:30 a.m., which was probably about 10:30 in the morning UK time.
We're
so
both going to be the same here, yeah.
So a couple of hours to kill before the game, watch the game, and then I had a nice little nap until now. So I haven't even had a chance to check any post-match analysis.
You've been sleeping and I've been driving, so this is as fresh as it gets, guys. In some ways, you can count yourself lucky. This is that first moment of us picking these things apart. So I similarly was disappointed that Luongo wasn't going to make the team. It's interesting. I wonder if he would have gone for 4-4-2 if he was fit, because that would have been a change anyway from the team that won midweek if Atinuyu was going to start. But yeah, it's always it's just a shame when that happens, when you sort of feel like even if we put in a good performance, we're not at our full best, losing out on a player in that way. But hopefully he's not too bad. Hopefully Luongo's not too bad. I have to say, I thought Sam Hutchinson did a fantastic job dropping in at centre-back.
I was really happy to see from the team sheet that he came in to deputise at centre-back. I felt that in that situation, I think you need a character who's someone's going to come in and just in that very kind of short shrift moment of being told that you're on, I think Sam Hutchinson's very much the character of someone that you'd want to come in and deputise. So I was really happy to see that. And thankfully, he didn't prove me wrong in that aspect.
I thought he really shone, and I thought Iorfa had a fantastic game as well. In fact, all the defence really did really well today. I did wonder whether it might be Fox sort of stepping in at left-sided centre-back, and then I don't know whether we'd do something else. But yeah, they all did a fine job. Westwood produced some fantastic saves as well. So what did you make of the game as a whole? I don't have sort of a full match report or anything to work through, so to give a kind of a satisfying timeline, to be honest. But if were you making notes during the game?
I was, and definitely the first half was a real battle. So again, looking at that kind of looking at that team sheet, I was wondering that playing two in the middle. I was wondering if you're just going to kind of bypass the midfield whatsoever. As hilariously chatting with my brother, who's very much more on the opposite end of the spectrum to Joey Pelopessi that Rich is. So he laments the presence of Joey Pelopessi quite a bit. But I was thinking really that for a large majority, we're not really going to play through the middle, thinking that we're going to go try and get it long and use that height and power of Nuyu and Fletcher to really cause some damage. And I think that's kind of really what we aimed at. It wasn't particularly pretty, but the thing I will kind of confess to is, and definitely with the nature of playing kind of direct sides, or playing a direct side for Wednesday, is that you can still create some kind of magic and still kind of create some moments up top, the further ends of the pitch. You just kind of get there quicker if you have the players to deal with it. But it didn't really look to kind of work, or I wasn't really sure what the kind of issue was in the first half, but there really wasn't much being created. It was a huge battle with the Leeds players. I thought Leeds were definitely dominating and setting the pace of the game. But I think in the degree of like looking at Monk's sides and looking at our counter-attacking side, we seem to embody a little bit of that.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much was kind of just the players were kind of given a degree of allowance to give, to let Leeds have a bit more of the ball and have a bit more control.
There's an awful lot of teams in this league who like in conversational terms, they like the sound of their own voice. There's an awful lot of teams in this league that, now that they can put a centre back in the box and start playing from that far back, seizing that opportunity. But what almost all of them boil down to is they just will aimlessly pass it around their back 4 or 5 for as long as you let them. And there was definitely an aspect of that from Leeds, because I think any time they tried to sort of up the pace, or start to play a bit more of a probing pass, it seemed to fall apart pretty easily. It was interesting, because I think at no point did it feel like we were winning that midfield battle. I think Bannon has got so used to not defending. He's defending. That's not fair. He's defending further up the pitch. So he's broken his habit of sitting deep and trying to be all things to all men and provide those last ditch tackles that he used to do. And a lot of that meant you had heart in your mouth, because you don't want to see anybody sliding in, particularly not a kind of diminutive, angry Scotsman. Not much happened in the central midfield, because I think they were trying to go down the flanks and we were mixing up going long and going down the flanks. But I thought first half it was fairly evenly matched, but we looked like we needed half time to just kind of sort out what everybody was supposed to be doing. I think there was a few occasions where players looked like they weren't sure, particularly the fullbacks weren't sure whether they should go forward or not in certain situations. Yeah,
which I guess is an interesting thing. I mean, you never really know the lay of the land and what's going on in the game until you've seen you've seen that opening deal of what the opposition is doing. So I can kind of see that. I wondered whether with all the changes that we had a rough idea of a game plan and maybe it was just not kind of fully formed. I wonder about these changes and that we have, and I think the players who came in did remarkably well in that situation. I would say for Joey Pelopessi, I think definitely coming up against some of the players of quality and caliber that Leeds have, I don't think he was going to win many kind of foot races or any kind of battles in the middle of the park. But by no means did he embarrass himself. And I think that's probably one of the nicer things I can say about Joey Pelopessi today. But yeah, we just looked a little bit out of sorts, I think.
Well, I think it's a big shift. I think so. If we'd made that decision to go to 2 in midfield, we don't know when that happened, because as you say, we were told Luongo and so we were told Luongo and Westwood had both been past fit. And had been training with the first team. So the fact that Luongo's nowhere near the squad makes you think, oh, did something happen? And how late in the day did it happen?
Which is a very strange, I don't know if it's a little bit of kind of mind games or maybe just poor miscommunication amongst teams, or we're not letting on anything to the press. Apparently, after the game, Monk has said about Luongo, said that he was feeling his ankle and they checked his ankle and it was still swollen. They thought it would have died down, but it hadn't. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe it's a bit of mind games. I don't mind that at all, to be honest. If that's the case.
And then the smaller disappointment out of all of this is us as fans getting upset that we don't get to see a player. Yeah, exactly. We get disappointed in the lineup. I guess the funny thing, especially about this squad, is Rich, is that we have quite a number of players, but then now Lees is injured still or coming back from injury. I don't really have any kind of great perspective on when Bates is coming back. And Julian Burner has done something in the warm-up, which again is not something I've kind of looked into what's happening there, excuse me. But there are a few times I do kind of get a little bit worried about some of the numbers that we have.
I think today looking at it, I suppose that it won't be every day that Hutch deputises in defence, but we didn't really have a solid midfield op to bring on. I know we've got Kieran Lee there, but it's more and more feeling like Kieran Lee is part of the squad out of some sort of sympathy vote. Not that he hasn't deserved some sympathy and some loyalty from the club, but I wouldn't have much faith if I saw a starting lineup that was Kieran Lee starting in our central midfield. That would worry me for the game ahead, because at the moment I'm not sure what he's bringing to the table. Whether that can come, I don't know, but at this point in time, I'm not sure what Kieran Lee at this stage in his career is particularly good at. But I think so. Maybe it was a clever ruse. The 4-4-2 was what we were going to go with anyway. But it is disruptive. Burner dropping out and being replaced by Hutchinson means not only do we have a new defence, we've also got a new midfield. So it's doubly disruptive.
Yeah.
Hutchinson and Pelupessy are very different in the way they play midfield. Hutch and Burner probably not too dissimilar actually in the way they play centre back. So it meant that the defence I thought looked pretty solid all the way through, and really the only drop in their understanding was the moment where Bamford kind of played them both and got his free header that produced a wonderful save from Westwood towards the end of the half.
That was astonishing, and that was really the only time. I think that was probably the first Leeds effort on target. I don't think they had anything else, or if they had something else, we kind of looked over it in a weird way. Because we kind of, the thing that I was really impressed with today was the defensive shape that we had.
Yeah,
which is definitely a hallmark of this Monk side, is that we are very professionally organised and very effective in that department. We hold a good shape, and we don't give much change to the opposition. Saying that, though, I guess it was a weird first half, because, I mean, even though that, I was happy that we contained them, but we didn't really I couldn't really see what the plan was. I don't think it was particularly working. The prospect of having both New Year and Fletcher, kind of these two battering rams, really pushing and pulling the lead centre-backs around and apart. We didn't really kind of profit from that kind of, that long ball approach. A lot of the time, it was a few kind of punts forward from the defence under pressure. So there wasn't really even an option to play it through the middle. And then Westwood's kicking. I was chatting with my eldest brother about this. I said, Westwood's kicking isn't particularly great. He said it's better than Dawson. And I said, that's damning with faint praise, really.
You see how he's anytime he tries to mix it up from a punt directly down the field, which may go straight down the middle, it may veer left, it may veer right. But anytime he tries something different from that, so trying to pick out a man on the left or right, it nearly always goes straight out of play. Or even worse and bounces, in a dangerous territory, kind of hands possession away in that way.
Well, we also have a smattering, a little sprinkling of a few occasions where Westwood just ends up punting it out for a throw-in anyway.
Yeah.
Which I think happened at least once in the first half. It may have happened twice.
Yeah. I don't know whether he can't throw or just doesn't like to. You never see him sort of bowl it out.
No. That was very much a Cameron Dawson move, wasn't it? When when the former manager Jos Luhukay thought that Cameron Dawson was some Edison of a championship, and that would be the one to help revolutionise this playing out from the back mentality. So Dawson can do that. We've seen it sometimes be more effective than other times.
Yeah.
Especially under that, we definitely played it very short and invited a lot of pressure on ourselves, which didn't turn out very well.
No, I mean sort of a longer throw. Goalkeepers, obviously one of the most famous exponents of it was Peter Schmeichel. He could throw it over the halfway line with pretty good accuracy and pace.
Mm-hmm.
But you wonder with Westwood, so he can't really trust himself, and other players can't trust him to play a pass to them with his foot. I just wonder if some of those middle distance things, where they're throwing the ball, if he's got that in his locker, whether that's an option. It's just we can't make quick breaks. There was one great bit where he maybe a couple of times where he really came and claimed across really well, and then he looks up and he kind of pumps his hand like he's going to do something. But we know, and all the players know, they are not going to be passed the ball by him. So it's just one of those things where it's a bit of kind of dead air, because what comes next is a punt straight down the middle of the pitch. Anyway.
So just to kind of sum up the first half, I mean, we had two half-decent chances. There was a good effort on the 14-minute mark from Palmer, where he kind of rasped
Lovely little shot, yeah. That was really
nice.
Which was
pretty damn good for Palmer. The commentator said, last time he scored was that time that me and you mentioned, I think, in a previous podcast against MK Dons. So that was 2011. Yeah. So that was 8 years ago, basically. Last scored in a regular game. I mean, I do remember him scoring in a preseason friendly, maybe last year, I think it was, or the season before.
Yeah.
I think it's when we played Espanyol, I think it was.
Yes.
And he scored in that game. That was the beginning of last season. But for an actual proper game, Palmer doesn't score, and it's not. It'd be nice if we had a few more players who could finish and who were decent. Chip in with that, because. I guess the funny thing is, looking at both Wednesday and Leeds, we seem from the kind of stats wise and kind of looking at the table, we look like very similar sides for goals for and goals against. Leeds don't seem to score many goals. I think they've scored a few more than us, and they don't concede many goals.
To be honest, that's what, if I had to sort of sum up what was the game like, I'd say it looked like two pretty decent teams who were very evenly matched. That's what it looked like. And yeah, I think you're right. And it may well be that that's going to be the case. I'm just looking at the actual stats. Yeah, so we've scored one more goal than they have, but we've conceded two more.
Yeah.
So it's very, very close in terms of how the seasons have gone so far.
And especially that kind of the only other chance we can talk about is that fantastic shot from Fletcher, the one where he absolutely rasped it at the keeper, and that was also that was that one. No, that was the 1-2 from Fletch. Fletch did a great bit of work to do a little 1-2 with Nuyu just outside the box.
Yes,
and then got it, then just absolutely rafts one at the keeper, and
wrapped his foot around
diving parry over the bar. So.
That was a great save.
It was a great hit and a great save. Not quite as good as the save that Westwood pulled out from Bamford.
No, because that one was just, you were just waiting on it sneaking in.
You waited to just nestle into the corner. Yeah. It felt like watching that. It felt like an eternity of watching the ball.
Oh, so slow motion.
Head towards the goal. But
it was both centre-backs misreading the ball so that Bamford had the free header. That all happened so slowly. And then his little sort of flick of a header around the corner meant that it was barely moving. But yeah, finally Westwood just got his fingers to it at the end.
So
yes,
it was an interesting kind of first half, I'd say. Like it was a real fight. There's a lot of battle. The thing that was kind of, I think we did remarkably well to keep that shape and to keep that defensive organisation and not really give much change to Leeds. It's scary how much quality they have in their side. I do want to say, like they looked a very, very good side. To kind of go toe to toe with this Leeds side was impressive to me. That's probably one of the biggest positives of the game.
It was really odd actually to get so full time in a game like that. I think had they not had their spell where they had those two good chances in a row in the second half, that it might have been a bit of a different story. But the full-time whistle blew, and I think everyone just stood up and clapped. And walking out of the ground and walking back to the car, all of the chatter that I was hearing, I'm sure there's some confirmation bias. I'm sure there were people moaning in some corners, but all of the chatter I was hearing was people being pretty chipper about the game and quite pleased with it. And I think boiling it down, like you say there, going toe to toe, I think so many times in the last 3 or 4 seasons, maybe even sometimes under Carlos, even, when we were kind of in this conversation at the top of the table last time, we'd come to those big games and it was like the plan was to just hold on, maybe sneak something, but we weren't addressing them as equals. They were better, and we were trying to kind of pull off a trick against them, And today felt like no, we'll stand and we'll duke it out and we'll see who wins. And it turns out actually nobody won. Sorry. But it was actually nice to be involved in that game where you come away thinking we're two of the better sides in this league, and we both deserve to be where we are, I think. Sorry, go on.
I just want to say, so I guess it's an interesting thing. Do you think it marks well that the first half was kind of fair? It wasn't scintillating, but it was competitive. It was full-blooded. We did compete. I think we also did a little bit fortunate. I felt we had a very good referee today. I found that helped. Yes. I think midweek against Stoke, we had a decent referee. I felt the referee did very well today. Only a few yellow cards. I wondered with the condition, with slipperiness and seeing Hutchinson at centre-back, whether we would see a real booking palooza at Hillsborough at F6. And it wasn't. And they've had a decent control of the game. There's a few yellows. There's a few kind of small kind of decisions, but nothing huge and nothing. I mean, there's some people are talking a lot about Phillips hitting Joey P in the face.
Yeah, so that's one of those incidents where I only saw it at the time, but you could definitely see an arm was swung towards him. So was there much in that?
It was interesting. So I've told you again how with my feed I have DAZN here in Canada, which basically has a Sky Sports feed. It's a game that's broadcast. So they have the feed from that, but seemingly DAZN knows that its bread is buttered with the big ticket of the Premier League rights that it has. So it's only going to commit in terms of resources one commentator. So I have some chap who is Jeff McCommentator, some guy I've never heard of in my life, but it's just him on his own, and he turns up and does a job, but there's no great passion or narrative being pushed forward. I imagine the interesting things of watching Sky. I understand it was a bit of a Leeds love-in, which they're playing to a very, very popular and well-supported side, even if a team that is also well disliked by a lot of people as well. Mm-hmm. So a lot of things kind of fed into that narrative, imagine, for the Sky Sports commentary. But when I kind of watch it, it's very kind of somber. And also I kind of enjoy that when I'm watching something in the dark and 5:30 a.m. as well. So they kind of mentioned it and they did replay it, but it was very non-committal to going in any great direction. Okay. So I'd be interested to see what the narrative pushed by Sky is, since everything is very much a story with Sky Sports. You can't just purely have a football game. This was a football game. It happened. This happened. Everything becomes a narrative. And I'd be interested to see what Sky said, even though I understand that naturally with Leeds United, it's a bit of a love-in. It's a bit of a love fest. And Yeah, so I mean that was kind of close. There wasn't anything I really kind of disagreed with, so that was good. The thing I wanted to get onto was saying that I wanted to ask you, Rich, do you think it was so positive coming out the ground because the second half had a lot more impetus, and I felt like we came out with a lot. Maybe they had a rocket or a mini rocket. I'm not sure of the size of rocket the players received at half time, but they certainly upped their game in the second half, and
Yes.
we did look for large portions the slightly better side in a game of very fine margins. So,
Well, it's interesting. So in terms of I'm not sure it was a rocket as much as it was just being able to give proper instruction to players in the new lineup, because I just think that just didn't have time to happen. Because you say, oh, Joey Pelipesi playing central midfield. Well, that's a pretty multifaceted role to be playing in a team. So what are his responsibilities? What are Bannon's responsibilities? What are we supposed to do when this happens, when that happens? All that sort of stuff. If we're having to make a decision within minutes, none of that has a chance to kind of get talked about. And even like who got marked at set pieces. I mean, the first set piece, bizarrely, Iorfa was marking Alioski or whatever he's called, who is about 4'0". That didn't continue. You won't be surprised to hear. But it just was like it just felt like we hadn't had a chance to sort out the responsibilities in the new layout. So I think getting to halftime let us have those conversations, so we had a clearer view of what the plan was. I also think to an extent we might have let Leeds kind of wear themselves out a bit. I think they sort of continued pushing to about the 55-minute mark, but after that it took them quite a while to get to that stage where they maybe had that sort of second or third win, and that was all time where we were really pushing and looking pretty dangerous. I thought Atty did nothing much in the first half, but really had a good second half. In a way, with your kind of critical eye, I'm not sure taking Atty off was the best idea when we did, because Forestieri brought a lot of energy. But if you watch the game back, nothing actually really happened after Forestieri came on. And it felt like with Atty on the pitch, it was almost a matter of time, because we just seemed to be getting chance after chance, and Fletcher hit the bar. So there was the one from Harris where he killed it into the far post, and the keeper made another fantastic save.
So that's an interesting question, was it? Because I noticed the game opened up a hell of a lot more in the second half. And I don't think it was just basically you're coming up against a team who has a bit of impetus. Suddenly a team shows impetus and a bit more pace and urgency, and stopping that is a little bit of a shock, and it's difficult to do.
Yes.
I mean, I think it's also been kind of noted, especially from some of the previous games, looking at Cardiff, a little bit of Stoke as well. I'm curious, what do you do from a footballing perspective as a defending side when a team comes at you like that?
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure what the answer is. I don't know if I get my badges and get some points, or some football managers have a good perspective to say, here's what you do in that. I sometimes feel like we're lacking kind of a good idea as to what to do in those situations. But I also understand that it's very difficult to deal in those situations well. So I felt like Leeds were, looking like they're struggling, that we're going at them. And the game just opened up so much more. And we actually started kind of pushing and prying and playing balls through the middle. And we were looking a lot more kind of dangerous side. I don't know if you kind of answered this before, Rich. My point to you was, do you think that it seems positive amongst the fans that the second half was so much more positive in that regards?
I think so. I also think just, Leeds thankfully has been one of those fixtures I think I've been able to consistently get along to for whatever reason for a number of years, and I think yes, it was a good performance second half. I think as well, by making the changes we did, we kept trying to win the game, so we were doing better than Leeds, and we made our changes to try and make ourselves even more dangerous. So I think there's always an element. It's just nice to see, because I think you sometimes feel like, and we've had a lot of it this season, where people go, oh, like at Stoke, I've seen comments online from people saying, oh, we should have battered them, should be beating teams like that 3-0 and things like that. So there's been this weird arrogance really throughout the Chansiri era, where it's like, oh, it's not enough to even win. We have to like win impressively. And almost like we've got this kind of God-given right to win a game of football. And some games like today, you can absolutely do everything right, make some really good chances, and it's just not your day.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, particularly that Fletcher chance where, you know, he beats the keeper, cannons off the bar, hits the goalkeeper's back, but still kind of rolls out of play.
Yeah.
That's just one of those things where it's like, you know, Fletcher could take that shot 100 times and that course of events would probably happen just the one time it happened. So probably in like 60 or 70 of those scenarios he scores the goal. So just those things. It was just nice to have that feeling that there was a bit of togetherness, a bit of pride walking out of the ground. When sometimes you do feel like it's a bit of a bottomless pit. People can't be pleased enough. Oh, it was 5-0, but what about that chance? It could have been 8. That would be a nice position to be in. Obviously.
Certainly wasn't a Southampton-Leicester game, was it?
It wasn't one of those. No, definitely.
So I think that kind of really sums up the game. Should we kind of get cracking on player ratings and just kind of cycle through these pretty quickly? Westwood, I decided to give a 7 for. I think he gets a 7 for that impeccable save. Still a few questions about his kicking. That's not something we're really going to get kind of corrected.
No.
I think if you noticed in previous occasions, you've said, Westwood's kicking's often saved by the fact that, the mobility and ability of Fletcher up top can sometimes save that. But I think we've gone with a 7. I think that's fair.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough.
Palmer, I decided to give a 7 for. I think he did fine. He defended very well. I definitely agree with you that, especially that beast in the second half, he looked to be getting forward a little bit more as well. He had a tough game, though. I mean, I think defending and going up against Leeds on the flanks with some of their quality is going to be tough for anyone.
Yeah.
And I think he did well. Actually, I might give Palmer a 7.5. I like that effort he had in the first half.
I like that shot. I think, that would be my inclination, 7.5, because of the lovely effort. But yeah, you're right. Sometimes, especially for fullbacks, there's going to be times where you push back, and they are set up. I think they were playing 5 at the back. But they were also, I think they'd kind of split the midfield to try and overrun us on the flanks a little bit. So it was tricky for both the fullbacks, but they both did really well. And Palmer, that could have, again, on another day, that was such a good effort that could have been spilt and somebody else could have gobbled up the chance, or it could have been a goal in its own right. So just nice to see him doing so well. It's really pleasing.
Yeah, I think the better of my ratings have really gone towards defence. So with Iorfa, I've gone for a 7.5. I didn't really make any great notes, but I just thought he was very assured. I enjoyed he also had another marauding run as well in the first half, which I really enjoyed. He was just great. He's just been fantastic.
Until I see evidence otherwise, I think he's my choice for right-sided centre-back. He's just so, I don't know, he brings so much to that role. And he's developing a kind of, because I think at fullback he can often look that, I mean, it's a cliche, but the Bambi on ice sort of comment. At centre-back, he's almost sort of languid. There's more fluidity to the way you move. It just all looks better put together. I just love it. I love Big Dom at centre-back. I'm all about it, Luke. I'm just saying. Okay, and then Hutch is
Hutchinson. So bar his horrendous Cockney waltz in the first half, where he decided to have a little 1-2 papa, whatever it was, kind of bring it out from the back, which nearly got us into some trouble in that time. Apart from that, I mean, he didn't really put a foot wrong for the rest of the game. I just felt that it was a game that I think he was someone who really stepped up to the challenge of being and kind of deputizing that role. And it just says a lot about his character and who he is as a player.
Yeah. And
that was a real positive. I feel like that's definitely a 7.5.
It's where you see he still talks about himself he sees himself as a centre back, despite the fact almost all of his time at Wednesday he's played in midfield. He, if he has to put his job title on passport application or whatever, it's centre back, and you see that he's more assured, he's calmer as a centre back than he is as a midfielder, he's a nutcase, just going around, just hawking people down, tackling them around their knees.
Maybe this is a conversation. Maybe this is a conversation that will kind of carry on if we see more of Sam Hutchinson staying with the club. I think a lot of people have kind of said this as well, so it's not a particularly new or novel kind of concept for me. But the mentality of like, hey, he's getting older, he's losing a bit of pace. How about you bring him back? You know, he moves back in the game. He moves back in the pitch. So maybe centre back in his kind of, you know, his latter era of his career is probably a good switch for him.
Maybe. I suspect his pace is a big part of him as a player, but we'll see. So do you think? So let's say if Burner can't make the Blackburn game next Saturday, would you go with Hutch or would you put Thornley in?
That's a really big question. I don't really know the answer to that. I feel on this evidence, I feel you have to give it to Hutch right now.
I think so too. It just leaves us a little bit limited in midfield. That's the only thing. It
depends. The question, the second follow-up to that question, the second cause is what's going on with Action Mass?
Yeah.
Is he in perpetual inaction right now? Also, Julian Burner apparently rolled his ankle.
Oh, okay.
So that's what Gary Monk was saying after the game. Anyway, should we move on
to... do you think the injury's bad enough that he's... this is Luongo. Do you think it's bad enough that he's hooked up onto a hospital bed in some sort of machinery?
Why do you say that, Rich?
I'm saying do you think he's traction mass? Oh, that's my favourite bit of the episode.
Moving on to Fox as well. Fox was very good again. As much as I've bemoaned the lack of Moses Odebajo from the team, there was an impromptu. Fox has been pretty good, and he had a really good game today.
He did, including he played the pass for Fletcher hitting the bar. That was a really... I know,
that was a 1-2 he had, wasn't it? Was it 1-2 Paris, I think? And Fox absolutely marauded, kind of drifted into the inside, just coming forward with a real purpose and tenacity that's rarely seen from, one of our fullbacks.
Yeah.
Fed it into Fletcher, and Fletcher absolutely thundered it against the bar. So I've given him a 7.5. I think he was definitely one of the standout performers today.
Yeah, he was really good. I was just saying that notable. There was an impromptu round of people singing his song today, which that's a real rare occurrence. What a turnaround for that guy.
That was great to hear.
I mean, it's a pity that so many people have to be pricks in the first place, but it's nice when it comes full circle. Like, that's the Lewis Buxton thing, It's a shame that people were awful enough to boo one of our own players, but it's nice to see them have the kind of wherewithal to turn that round for themselves. Through solid performances. He's not spoken out in the press or won us round with his singing voice. It's just been, good hearty left-back performances, like the one today. Little Joey P.
Give him a 6. He was a bit out of sorts. I think we can always rely on a bit of industry and trying from the muscles from Heracles. That's all I can really say about him. I thought it was difficult dropping into a role. And also, the problem is you're not really going to kind of win that midfield battle.
No.
He did okay. He was okay. It was probably I think it was probably the weaker performances of the day.
I think he did a lot of the kind of quiet unnoticed stuff. I think because a lot of what he does is sort of blocking off passing channels and things like that. So sometimes not seeing him is better than seeing him all the time, if that makes sense. But it was tricky for him today, and I think it's tricky because Bannon's got so used to being a fixture further up the pitch. So there's just more to do if you're playing in a 2 with Bannon. That's a harder job now because he's relinquished a lot of that responsibility he used to take on. For the better of him and the team, but it does make being a defensive midfielder with him in a 2 potentially sort of unfeasible, to be honest. Although by and large they coped pretty well today. But Baz
gave a 7.5. It was a decent performance. I think he was a little bit of everywhere and he's got a little bit of bite to his game. We always ask Bannon to do a lot, but it just goes on the nature of what a capable and fantastic footballer at this level that Bannon is, that he can just even a 7 out of 10 from Bannon is still pretty damn worthwhile.
It's tasty, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd be inclined to go for 7 because I think one of the reasons we went with Nuhiu and Fletcher is actually Leeds up pretty short along the centre back. Along the back line. Even Reach was kind of towering above both of their centre-backs. And I just think we lacked quality in our set pieces today. We never really challenged them.
That was funny because I noticed that Bannon was doing one of his signals, one where he supposed to touch his head, and then he after that one, which I kind of focused on, I think in the second half, first half meant that basically it wasn't going to clear the first man.
Yeah, exactly. He did that gesture 3 times, and the corner went to 3 completely different bits of the box. There was just. I think it summed up his. It's weird that the rest of his game was working pretty well, because I agree. I think he had a good game and he was everywhere other than those set pieces. But the one we had towards the end, where he just lofted it straight to the goalkeeper, that was just kind of a bit of in a nutshell, that was what all the set pieces had been like, basically.
Yeah.
That's where we could have really hurt them, I think, if we were doing a better job with those sets.
That was the disappointment for the game, was having that height with Fluyu and Netcher.
Yeah, those two.
Those two up top. We didn't really.
The first pair of championship thuggery.
And then you also, you look and you've probably got Iorfa to kind of chip in as well on set pieces.
Yeah.
We didn't really do much damage, which was a shame.
We didn't stretch them at all in that regard, unfortunately. No. And we really should have been able to, I think.
How did you felt that kind of looking at the wingers? How did you feel that Reach did?
He sort of symptomatic of the way the team played. I think he had an indifferent first half and a really bright second half.
Mm-hmm.
He did a lot of ball carrying and put, sort of bringing us 10, 15, 20 yards forward with his running in the second half. Had that decent opportunity that kind of dropped over his shoulder as well. Wasn't the best shot he's ever had, but it was the right thing to do, was to just hit it. If that makes sense.
Swing his foot at it. Yeah. Just
the decision making was right, even if the execution wasn't quite what it should have been. But yeah, I thought he had particularly second half. I thought he had a good half. What did you think?
I'd probably agree with that. I found it hard to kind of make any great notes on Reach today. We've had brighter games from him. I think we've had a few worse games recently, so I kind of opted for a 6.5.
Oh, fair enough. I think
we can get some of the quality that we can usually get from Reach,
Yeah, I think he was trying to make the most of what was happening due to the 2 big front men, but it was a tough game today. It was really hard it was hard to stand out attacking wise. There was one key moment where, I'm just remembering now, where Reach was running with the ball and both the centre forwards did like the worst possible version of the run that they could have done. So like Fletcher disappeared. This is in the second half. Fletcher disappeared behind like literally four Leeds players. I'm not exaggerating. And Nuhiu chose to run directly in front of Reach, like exactly where Reach would want to go with the ball. Although obviously a lot slower than Reach would be able to run if Ati Nuhiu was not stood in his way. And then just kind of stop. So neither of them made any run that he was able to do, and therefore Reach ends up losing the ball. And I think sometimes he runs himself into cul-de-sacs, as all wingers do. But then sometimes the cul-de-sac kind of gets built around you as you're doing the running. Because I think he worked his socks off, and I'm sure he'll be really frustrated that he didn't get anything going really today. But I almost think it wasn't particularly him lacking in quality or effort. It just wasn't happening. It was too busy, the situations where he was getting the ball and things like that. Harris on the other side.
I was a bit more generous with Harris. I kind of went for 7. Maybe not his day in terms of quality. I think both Reach and Harris can both suffer from a bit of a less day of quality. I made a note about Harris in that chance where he tucked in, he got it onto his right foot as he likes to do. Yes. And I said, one day Harris will put his foot through one and scream into the top corner. Today wasn't that day. Wasn't that day, which we've had a few of those as well. I think a goal is in him. A goal or two is in him in those positions. Well, I think the thing that was frustrating in that situation was he had some better crossing options.
Yeah. There was one of those that was really good, that was nearly a goal. There was one of those where there was one where you're just begging Nuiu to. I mean, he probably would have bashed his head off at least the post, if not the bar and the post. But you just just throw yourself at it. Let's make something happen. So he did that. He did that one, Harris. But before that, he'd had I think that's the one you're talking about, a better opportunity. And he ended up putting it probably 10 feet wide and 10 feet over. I think I just enjoy watching him do what he does, and I'm constantly amazed by how much energy he has, particularly when immediately after losing the ball or being tackled or playing his cross, he looks completely exhausted and downtrodden. Then the next time the ball comes, he's full of running again. So he's an impressive individual in many ways. Mm-hmm. And on another day, could have easily had a goal today. Mm. So then, Ati Nuiu?
I went for a 6.5 for Nuiu. I think that probably maybe sums up the kind of balance of the game. He did all right. I was disappointed just there wasn't a bit more kind of needle and bullying from him for the centre-backs. I think that's the thing for him and Fletcher. That was just a bit... that was what I was expecting completely from this game. I was expecting that Netcher and Fluiu, as I said, because obviously they're so interchangeable as characters and players. Yes. I just expected them to just be a real kind of tag team wrestling outfit today, I'll be honest. It was just kind of a bit missing. I mean, I still think for Nuiu, the promise is better. It's the better option to bring off the bench than to start with.
I would tend to agree. I thought, I would give Nuiu at least a 7 because I thought he was right in the middle of all the good stuff that was happening in the second half. Mm-hmm. He was holding the ball up. He was working the channels. I thought he did a lot more than Fletcher second half. I thought Fletcher was a little bit anonymous at times second half. It a bit like how Hutch and Bannon used to be fighting over that same sort of square of ground just in front of the centre backs. A little bit. It felt like Nuiu had kind of stolen his bread, and he was looking for things to do around the outside of that Fletcher. But I thought Nuiu was doing a good job with the bits and pieces he had, drawing people in and then spreading the play out further wide. Interestingly, Nuiu made 4 tackles today, apparently, which is more than any other player on the pitch. So yeah, I thought he did a bit better than that, although it was getting to the point when he came off. It was getting to the point where something needed to happen in terms of a change. We needed something. We needed a bit more pace, basically up top, I think. But I was so pleased with Nuiu. I would have been tempted to take Fletcher off for Forestieri because I think all of the good stuff stopped happening then.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But I think you're right. It was interesting. We were almost set up for it to be a bit of a turf war up there, and it never really happened. I would say part of why it didn't happen was the poor set pieces.
The
fact that we kept just kicking the ball straight to their goalkeeper meant that they weren't able to kind of get their pointy elbows out and work some of those situations in the way that you love to as centre forwards, big centre forwards. Okay, Fletch.
I gave him a 7.5. I'm gutted for him he didn't score somehow. I felt he did almost everything right to get in that position. Maybe a little bit unfortunate with I think it was the Bannon cross that was kind of teased across in the second half.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And he kind of stretched to it and kind of cleared it out as opposed to actually getting it towards the goal. But I think it was an impeccably difficult angle for that. And the shots, both shots in the first and the second half, nice, that lovely rasping drive, I don't think I've seen him hit it as sweetly. I genuinely struggle to remember times that Fletcher hits the ball as well as he did today on both occasions.
He is, not to sound like a broken record, but he is playing. This is vintage Stephen Fletcher football we're seeing right now. That I would be amazed if this is not one of his best 2 or 3 seasons he's ever had in his career, because he's giving us the full Stephen Fletcher on a twice weekly basis. And looking so fit and able doing it, it's really, really good. And with that is coming here, he's taking more of these. He's not taking the chances, if you know what I mean, in terms of scoring the goals. Unfortunately, they're not. They're not exactly flying in left, right, and centre. But he's taking on more of those opportunities than we'd normally see him do. I don't think normally he takes that shot from the edge of the box. And when he does, it's a pretty tame effort. That was a great effort from the edge of the box. Nice to see. But it speaks of a guy that is playing with a lot of confidence.
Definitely. I would give him a 7.5.
Yeah, I'm on board with that.
And so in terms of scores, I mean, he's up there for my man of the match. It's a difficult one to call for man of the match. I would maybe opt for Fox or Fletcher myself. Maybe Fox.
Yeah, I think Fox is a good call because I haven't seen it back, but there was also that particular shot. Before they hit the post, they had a really good effort, and I think Fox...
He did a goal line. Well, they called it a goal line clearance, but it wasn't.
They called it a goal line. Yeah.
It was going in basically. So yeah.
So that's As a defender, you've got to count those as being pretty much level heading with a goal.
Yeah, especially if you imagine a Julian Burner being there for you, you have to have a nice Burner grin.
Yeah.
Celebrate those
ones. On the back, so a bit too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that he was very, very close with his assist for Fletch as well. So no, I think let's give it to Morgan Fox.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
And then quickly, let's just go through the 2 substitutions.
2?
Was it 3 or?
No, there were 2.
Oh, okay. Kieran Lee, I gave a 6. He was a little bit anonymous. The disappointment of the joy of having Kieran Lee back to a certain degree of who Kieran Lee's being, but then recently definitely looking a bit rusty, looking a bit anonymous. It's disappointing.
It's a confidence thing, or do you think it's just old father time?
I think it might be option C, which is a bit of both, I'll be honest.
Yeah, it's probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
It's just... knowing what Kieran Lee is like in full flight, or was like in full flight, because tense is important here. Not so much today because he didn't have that much to do, but the Stoke game midweek, it was pretty hard to watch him be so kind of tame and ineffective. And today was more of the same. It just was less exposed, I think. 6 is fair enough. I think probably maybe even a touch generous, but yeah. So then Forestieri came on.
I'd give him Forestieri a 7. I thought it was a bit more like it. It was a brief cameo. I think having someone come on with that energy and spurts that Nando possesses is always positive. I think I heard some people say maybe he should have come on a bit sooner. I don't know. I think it was difficult to kind of, what would you sacrifice in a team that was doing well, holding its shape, and maybe on a few occasions looking to kind of grab that goal, that, if there was a goal in this game.
I think, the time when people were starting to, and I think even there was a little bit of like chanting his name, I think. At that time, for me, I was feeling like it was just a matter of time. We were kind of building ahead of steam, and we'd had a couple of really nice opportunities in a short space of time. So it's so hard to manage a game like that and manage, all the various bits of it. I think Forestieri, he came on. You're right. There's a lot of energy there. There's a buzz. People get excited when Forestieri comes on.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, we're getting into this. Is this the 3rd year now where oh, it's buzzy and exciting, and then did anything actually change? Did anything actually happen? There was nothing even remotely close to end product. And I know he's been out a long time, and I'm sympathetic to that. But if this is a guy that is, potentially hoping to secure another whopping great contract either with us or somewhere else, he's going to have to do better than just a bit of kind of bluster and running straight into the first person that's directly in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's going to have to happen soon because we're getting on for halfway through the season. And a big chunk of that has been missed through, whatever the reasons are. It was a big, long suspension, so he missed a chunk of time. But now he needs to get on with it. So we'll see. I do think 7 is fair. He created a buzz and things could have happened as a result of that. But it just felt like another one of these, oh, it's exciting, Forestieri's on, and everybody gets excited every time he gets the ball. And then does anything actually happen? Nothing you can point to on a scoreboard.
Yeah.
So that feels like I've ended on a bomb note, a bit of a negative note, and I apologise for that because I came away feeling pretty good about the game. And I just noticed that I do sort of pull up who scored whilst we chat. And one of the things I noticed, looking at the Championship top teams for ratings, number 1 is Leeds with 6.84, and number 2, Sheffield Wednesday with 6.8.
Excellent.
So I think it speaks to the fact we're doing all right, and I think today was a real testament to the fact that we're we're one of those teams that's got to be, you've got to keep an eye on if you're trying to put your picture together of who might be involved towards the end of the season. So that was it was a bit of a stamp of approval in that regard. So that was nice to have. We do rack up an awful lot of yellow cards. We're one of the dirtiest teams in the league as well. It's worth noting. And head and shoulders above his peers is Sammy Hutchinson in that regard.
They commented on the commentary that he has the most yellow cards in his league.
He may well. Surely he must be close to having the most yellow cards in all of football.
He could well do. I don't think there's any other characters, mainly the level of with that lack of discipline as Sam.
Yeah, 7 out of 14 games.
It's insane. Yeah,
he's already missed 1 as well. So actually, for him, it's 7 out of 13 games. Yeah, that's a lot. It's a lot of yellow cards.
He's definitely going to miss 2 games of suspension sometime soon, right?
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's only got 3 more then, I guess. Before.
Yeah.
He'll definitely get through those before Christmas. Anyway, those are fun things for another day. So yeah, another week and another week where we've maintained our 2 points per game average.
Yeah, 4 points from the last 2 is exceptionally good going. Maybe it's I think, as I said last week, slightly different perspective. I thought we'd beat Leeds and maybe have a difficult draw at home to Stoke, but turns out it's the way around. And frankly, I don't care as long as they keep getting that.
Yeah, exactly. Next up, we've got Blackburn, which they're on a pretty poor run of form. Our Blackburn Rovers, and I think the managers, there's question marks. I'm not going to prematurely announce the sacking of another manager on the podcast, but Mowbray is definitely there's murmurs about Mowbray, but they've lost the last 2 in a row. They've not won for 6 games. So probably going to be a Blackburn win. Is that what we're expecting?
It could well happen that way. So it's a difficult one to even think about or call. So maybe we'll just say we'll see what happens in that one.
We'll play it by ear.
Yeah.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful week, Luke, and I hope my cold clears up by the time we talk again.
Yeah, I hope you feel better, and I hope you have a good week as well.
All right. Cheerio, folks.
See you guys.